Welcome to Tech Topics brought to you by Cybervenger. We help keep small businesses stay protected and compliant with cutting-edge cybersecurity and IT solutions.
Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Andy. I'm the managing consultant for Cybervenger. Today we're doing another deep dive into the 110 controls of the NIST 800-171 standard. For those who don't know what that is a standard that governs how you perform security practices when handling information with the Department of Defense or other federal bureaus and departments. So if you're doing any of that kind of stuff, you definitely want to check out our video that describes exactly what the standard is and why you want to use it. Anyway, today's control is 3.7.1. If we look down here, we can see it says perform maintenance on organizational systems. And then in the next cell here, it goes on to explain some details on what that means. This is actually a great control. This control right here explains why Cybervenger is both a cybersecurity company and a managed service provider. What's a managed service provider? Managed service provider is the standard term used for the kind of company that you would hire to perform IT maintenance and help desk and that kind of thing. So maintenance is the big one, right? When you say maintenance, most people think of Windows patches being installed, and that's absolutely true. That's kind of the flagship thought of what maintenance is, but it's certainly not enough. It's certainly a very small thing of what gets done. So failure to do that sort of thing, we'll stick with the example of Windows Service Packs. Failure to do that will leave that system vulnerable to all the bad problems that the vendor, let's say Microsoft in this case, Microsoft found that there's a flaw in its operating system allowing a remote hacker to break in there, achieve God mode, and do Lord knows what with your files and personal data. That flaw is well known in the industry. They publish a document describing how it works and the fix. Now, you need to do all that you need to publish a fix in order to fix it. But as soon as you publish a fix, then people know it's there. So if you don't install that fix in a timely manner, you could have a bad day. You got to stay ahead of the bad guys. And here's kind of the problem. When you install patches, be it for Windows or other applications, it's not just the operating system, not just Microsoft. Everybody does this. When you install patches, you might break something. You can install a service pack that prevents another piece of software from working. You might damage things. I've seen all kinds. It's rare, but it happens often enough we have to take into account. You can't just install patches. Usually you have to balance that risk with the risk of not installing the patch. So what we tend to do is we deploy all our patches through a tool. It's called Enables N-Site Products. It's our RMM tool. RMM stands for Remote Monitoring Management. It's a classification of tools. It's what all these MSPs use. They use some kind of tool, right? Maybe it's Kaseya, maybe it's LabTech or Continuum or whoever. We're using Enable. Works great. Wonderful tool. But what we have to do is we have to deploy some of these brand new patches on Patch Tuesday to a tiny handful of machines first to make sure that if there's damage that occurs, that it's contained and we can roll back. There's all kinds of things that go into that management of the patching process. Now, maintenance is not just patching. Patching is probably the most famous, if you want to use that word, part of maintenance. And there are other things besides Windows, of course, that get patched. There are the applications. You might have 4D, you might have Sage, or you might have any of those software applications. I'm drawing a blank on all of it. You know what I mean? A line of business application has its own patches that may or may not be deployable through a managed tool like Enable. Enable's N-Site product can patch third-party tools, but only certain supported ones. So it can do Mozilla Firefox, Thunderbird, VLC Player, Audacity, Notepad. So there's a lot that it does, but it's certainly not everything. So you have to figure out how you're going to handle those kinds of applications. Sometimes you have to do it manually. You have to deploy it manually, and you have to schedule that, and then you need downtime windows to be able to shut the server down, to patch them, and reboot them. This is all a whole world of management that goes on involved into doing this. And it's kind of why MSPs exist. MSPs take on the burden of management of doing this sort of thing. And then you got to track it to prove that it's actually happening. It's so important. Honestly, 3.7.1 is probably one of the most important controls in the whole darn thing. Because if you don't do maintenance, if you don't install service packs, if you don't track that, if you don't do your testing, if you don't go through logging is a whole other family of controls and NIST. We just got through that. But if you don't manage the process of maintenance, which can mean many things, maintenance can also mean lifecycle management. If a system gets too old, then there are no patches to install, and it becomes vulnerable, and you don't even know it's vulnerable because no one's supporting it anymore. So lifecycle management of your software, of your hardware. An old server might have plenty of horsepower, and even if you have redundant servers to deal with the old age of the hardware, old hardware tends to fail, right? But if you have, like, say, a VMware cluster and you have like 5 hosts and you only need 3 to run, what do I care if it's old? If it burns out tomorrow, I don't care. I got 4 redundant, servers. You got to care because sometimes hardware itself can have an exploit that you have to patch and manage. So lifecycle management's a big one, of the software, of the hardware, of everything. Firmware updates are big, firewall firmware, switches, IoT devices, temperature monitors for your server room, printers is a big one. I remember there is, in fact, or was at one time, there's a vulnerability for a certain office scanner, fax thing in those multifunction devices, where you send a specially crafted fax in, and you basically can hack it that way, and then turn it into your own personal remote dial-in access server. So you dial a phone number, you connect up like a modem, and then you have remote access to the network. There was a proof of concept demonstrated many, many years ago. So all those seemingly unimportant devices need to be maintained. Lifecycle, patches, firmware, log management, all that. And if it's not supportable, not maintained by the vendor or somebody who can take responsibility, then you're violating 3.7.1 by having it there, even if you don't explicitly, if it's not explicitly spelled out there. So this is a big control. Well, there's a family of controls. 3.7.1 is the first of this particular family. And I'm going to go into more detail of what's there. Just want to kind of wet your whistle as to what you could expect from maintenance, why maintenance is so important, how comprehensive it actually is, what a big deal it is. This is going to take the meat and potatoes of your security effort. It really is. If you watch the news and you listen to all the breaches that happen out there, almost all of them can be traced back to a failure of this control right here. Somebody forgot a patch. Somebody didn't do something stupid like renaming a default admin account or didn't use two-factor. That's another really popular one. But a lot of breaches are because someone didn't do maintenance in a timely fashion. Not all of them. There's zero-day exploits. There's password cracking. There's other bad practices. But this is, in my opinion, the backbone of your security effort. That's why it's so important that you have a managed services company work with your security company or somebody that's one and the same, like we do. Or if you have an internal IT department, that you have somebody that is focusing on maintenance, and that's tough from a personnel management standpoint, because that's boring. Oh my God, maintenance is boring. It's not sexy. Nobody puts on their resume, yeah, I'm awesome because I can maintain patches on Microsoft. Everybody does that because everybody needs to. It doesn't help you stand out. So no one wants to do that. All IT people out there have the same goal: get more exposure and more experience so that you can stick stuff on your resume, so you can get bigger promotions and positions to help you get more experience to continue on and climb your way up the ladder, right? So this is boring stuff, and you're going to have to enforce the deployment of your patches and the maintenance and the tracking and the logging and reporting. You got to be able to prove this is happening. It's a hugely important control, and it's one that's kind of, you can tell I'm a little passionate about it, because I think that's the nuts and bolts of security is security hygiene. This kind of thing is what makes and breaks your security, your foundational basics. Like in sports, they always tell you, do the basics really, really well, or don't bother doing the fancy stuff until you do the basics really, really well. Flawless execution of the basics in so many disciplines, it yields you more results than any high-falutin fancy stuff. Fighting, sports, business, all these disciplines, and security very much holds true. Excel at the basics before you worry about the fancy stuff. This is where it all happens. Anyway, that's enough ranting about that. We'll move on to more details and the rest of the controls in this family of controls maintenance, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching. We hope this video has provided valuable information to you. Be sure to share this video with other small business owners to spread the word about the importance of cybersecurity. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this. If you want more information about cybersecurity, visit us at www.cybervenger.com.